Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Over 900 used vehicles in stock now and ready to move. More than any other dealer in the area. Plus exceptional service, selection, and savings. Need some summer spending cash? Sheeler will buy your vehicle even if you don't buy from us. Plus super money for your trade. Volume selling means volume pricing. And we've got the volume with over 900 used vehicles in stock now. No games, no gimmicks, just summer super deals at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer, locally owned for over 50 years. ID1 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Car insurance rates are rising rapidly. That's no secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Well, I'm back. I don't know if it's a good thing or not because TJ filled in with a very fun 3 days in the fast lane last week. TJ, did you have fun?
I had a lot of fun, Ed. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It sounded great listening. VTR and Sports app, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts. Tons of good interviews. Great energy from TJ. You got passion to do this thing, right?
Yes, sir, I do.
I can't hear you. Turn that mic on.
Yes, sir, I do.
Yeah, I'm glad. I can tell. It came across very well. So I was out in Oregon, meanwhile. My brother lives out there. Great, gorgeous part of the country. Different. By the way, because why not?
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
Here would be my review of Oregon. It's gorgeous. It's hard to compare it as far as the scenery because there's so many evergreen trees and the mountains are just taller out there. It's kind of like the extensions of the Rocky Mountains. I know it's not technically the case, but we're trying to paint a picture for those on the East Coast. Taller mountains out in Oregon. The food diversity in Portland is great. On a scale of like Lynchburg versus San Francisco, Lynchburg being fairly clean for a big city. Not perfect, but pretty clean. To San Francisco, which is like the dregs of dregs in my world, I would say Portland was not nearly as dirty as anticipated. There were certain elements of it, but at no point was I ever fearful. And it's not like San Francisco where everywhere you turn, there are homeless encampments and people. And I understand there are multiple factors that go into it. I understand it's a complicated issue that's out there. I'm not trying to bemoan it, but like San Francisco is the one place I've been where people are, I'm going to get graphic for 5 seconds, defecating and just shooting up FHM, fentanyl, heroin, or meth with no regard for anybody going on at all. Like it is, and LA has its pockets too. But Portland was a lot cleaner than anticipated. I understand there's certain news shows out there where it's like, let's just put a camera on like a 2-block radius and make it look bigger. But I never thought Portland was as bad as San Francisco or Los Angeles. Certainly the San Francisco area, which that's a whole nother can of worms. My wife was infatuated with the idea of going out there. Like she thought it was hippie utopia, Haight Ashbury, Hyde Park. Then we went to Asheville and she thought Asheville would be like the East Coast version. And this was after going to San Francisco and she realized like it's the same thing. Here's, by the way, one reality for cities where like literally anything goes. San Francisco, Asheville, Los Angeles. When literally anything goes, you can't be surprised when anything goes turns into the dregs of the dregs are also allowed and the lowest common denominator asserts itself. I get it. It's there in Portland. First of all, I don't ever view that as nearly as bad as like Memphis, where I went to school. That's a whole other can of worms in town for those watching. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, VTR and Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube, because I lived there for 4 years, so I get to use gang symbols when referring to Memphis, with the, M down signal. But anyway, I thought Portland was great. I liked it a lot. I definitely would be delighted to go back. Now we're back into the reality of the real world. And
after Ed's potentially unnecessary detour, let's get back on the road in the fast lane.
So on my way back, I ponied up the money, tax write-off, I guess, because it is technically work, to be able to get some Wi-Fi on the flight back from Portland to Charlotte so that I could watch the men's final of Wimbledon. Jannik Sinner wins it 4-6, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. And he bounced back from a heartbreaking loss to Carlos Alcaraz, where he had triple match point in the French Open. Meanwhile, Saturday, it was a different kind of defeat that made its way to the spotlight. 6-love, Iga Swiatek against American Amanda Anisimova in 57 minutes. We were joking. It's at Fastlane, Ed Lane on Twitter, by the way, that you could put coming up tonight on 60 Minutes, the entire tennis match. My brother just inserted with commercials. And it's about how it felt, the way Iga dismissed Anisimova on Saturday. But it begs a bigger sports question that's worth discussing in the fast lane. And I'll get arrogant probably for a second and say, having competed in sports at various degrees, I think it makes me more qualified, not supremely qualified, because nothing's on like this grand scale of sports competition. As much as we love events like the Star City Half Marathon and 10K, Freedom 424, Run for Their Lives 5K, or the Memorial Day 10K Run and 2 Mile Walk for Tide. Love those events. Great events. Very fantastic, and all have different missions that serve and better our community and our region. Like that, scale-wise, it's nothing comparable to what you get on a larger scale. But I've been fortunate. I've won some races before. I've won some accumulative standings where it's what you do over a period of time. I've got some of those as well. But I've also got some losses that have happened in there. And so it begs the question, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts, TJ. I did the InsaneRadioDeals.com fast take on this. What do you think is harder to overcome? Is it the blowout defeat on the biggest stage, or is it the I came so close but didn't get over the hurdle on the biggest stage?
I think coming close, right? Because one move and you probably could have had the title, whereas you get blown out. I mean, you did everything wrong. Now you're back to the drawing board, but you lose on the big stage on a super close margin. Now it's like, okay, what do I need to work on? And I got to look through everything now, unless I know where the exact moment is that I blew the match.
Yeah, I mean, see, and whatever the sporting event is, I think it's a great point. I am with you on that, TJ. I know it makes for great sports radio. Embrace debate when we're both on the same side. But like having competed before, I've had times where I've finished in second place in some competition, and it's been close, and it still eats at me. I've had races like when I ran the Star City Half Marathon and 10K in 2023. I finished second, and I went for it, but I knew the guy was better than I was. This guy had a PR that was like a minute or two. His win was a minute or two faster than what my PR at the 10K distance was going to be. So I went for it, knowing that it could blow up in my face, and somehow clung to second, but I knew what happened in that moment. Like it was essentially a blowout where I had one chance to go for it. I shot my shot. It didn't work out, whatever. Blowout to me, you almost go back to the drawing board and you get to look in the mirror and give yourself a reality check. Hey, I'm just not as talented as they are, or I just didn't play and compete my best on a given day. Versus when you're that close, it's all the little things that you did correctly, but there are one or two things that could have gone the other way. And then the knowledge that if you get back there again, I think this is where it gets real challenging. You have to go through all the prep work again to get back to that particular moment where you can have the ultimate outcome. It takes a lot of work. The bigger the stage, the more work goes into it because the more people want to achieve that particular goal in sports. And so you know in the back of your mind after blowing it, how much work you put in, how much it's going to take to get back to that particular moment. And then on top of it, how much more you're going to have to do because clearly you did something wrong that the other player or competitor or competitors as a team might have done correctly.
No, for sure. I think I agree. I think you hit the head nail on there. Let me take you to the Atlanta Falcons way before they made the 28-3 loss Super Bowl. They went to the NFC Championship, lost to Seattle, and they're like, okay, we feel like we know what it takes to get there now. Gonzalez even decided to hold off retirement.
San Francisco, I think that was the year they lost to San Francisco. When
you're right. Actually, I'm sorry about
that.
No.
But you're on the right point. And you bring up like your example of that, TJ. I think it's spot on about the way they lost, and it was I know the score may have been close, but San Francisco's in control the entire way. Like, it's like the Washington Commanders this offseason. They made it to the NFC Championship game, but Philadelphia, it's easy to say in hindsight, but Philadelphia was the better team last year. They were more talented. They had more stars. They had more accumulated experience on top of that with some guys who had won a Super Bowl with that franchise, an organization that had done that before. Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Jake Elliott, John Dorenbus. They were the Super Bowl winning holdovers. A ton of players who had made it before with Philadelphia versus Washington, which was basically starting from scratch. And Washington can look at that game and go, we had a lot of turnovers. We had missed opportunities where we could have gone for it and been more aggressive, and we were the underdog. Like, I think that's a great example. Versus the tight losses are the ones that eat at you. And I think you can even break this down of who's on the losing end. Like, again, Wimbledon's the example. Heartbreak for Jannik Sinner at the French Open. He's got triple match point, could not convert. Now, granted, it's on Carlos Alcaraz's serve, but he couldn't convert on any of those match points, ends up going on to lose the match. Versus Amanda Anisimova, who gets blanked 6-love in the Wimbledon women's final. But here's where I would say, as embarrassing as that is, the other differences to look at this are. And that's, I think the bigger difference, TJ, is championship experience versus no championship experience. Even if you suffered heartbreak, if you've got championship experience, whether it's an individual sport having done it yourself or in a team sport where you may have blown it, but you have competitors that have at least gotten over the hurdle, it's going to be painful. And there are going to be players that are going to transition out. But there's the what if that you don't have to worry about versus when you've just never done it before. I think in tennis, it's more exacerbated. I can say it individually in running. If it's individual running accomplishments, I can say personally that pressure is so much more exacerbated because you don't have anybody on whom you can lean. It's just on you, so to speak. Golf, tennis, running fit that category. But even team-wise, I think it's so pronounced that, and I'll throw college out to an extent because rosters just change so much more now than ever before. But even previously, from year to year and stretch to stretch, versus in professional sports, like the Atlanta Falcons, not the loss to the Niners you were talking about, but the infamous 28-3 Super Bowl loss. They never got back to that particular point. And as a franchise, they really didn't have anybody who had experience getting over the hump. So it's a painful loss versus you can look at some blowouts in the Super Bowl. Kansas City is the best example. This year, they were absolutely embarrassed by Philadelphia, 40-22, but it wasn't that close. Those were garbage time touchdowns that made that game look, they were cosmetic scores. They put a little bit of plastic surgery and lipstick on what was really a pig of a performance. But the thing, TJ, is as painful as it is, the way the humiliation occurred for the Chiefs, I have no doubt they'll be back. The sports books agree. They're one of the betting favorites this year. Anybody in their right mind, even though that was obviously there were roster deficiencies on that roster, and I think they were pronounced. Offensive line was concerned. They have Chris Jones, but not as much depth on defense as in prior years. Philadelphia really owned the trenches in that particular matchup. They got there in spite of that because the Chiefs still have a championship-winning head coach and a championship quarterback with proven pedigree. So humiliation on the big stage, sure. But Kansas City, it's not the humiliation versus the Falcons choking it away. It's the Chiefs have gotten over the hurdle before. You know that these people know what it takes to win versus the Falcons that was not there in their organization with the key players. And it's worth noting because Dan Quinn is now the head coach of the Washington Commanders. And I mean, quarterback-wise, I think that Jane Daniels is probably going to go down as being a lot better than Matt Ryan ever was, just when all is said and done, at least if Daniels continues on the trajectory. But I think that's probably the biggest debate that people look at tennis. Oh, Jannik Sinner bounced back from a gut-wrenching loss. He won 4 Grand Slams before. He can at least have said after losing the French Open, I know what it takes to get over the hump. I know it wasn't enough today, but I do have experience of getting over the hump. Girl that lost 6-love, the American Anisimova to Iga, she didn't have that experience. She's never gotten there before. And now you can compare her to Anj Jabeur. I know, all-time painful bet. Had her at 32-1, and she's up a set and loses that Wimbledon final to Rybakina a few years ago, lighting away $960 that could have come my way from that $30 bet on fire. Never gonna, not that I'm bitter or will ever forget that. but you just see that opportunity.
Yeah.
And she had never gotten over the hurdle. Jabor had, and she had one more chance the next year and choked it away again to Marketa Vondrousova, and it became obvious that was an issue. Versus, in sports, I think the big debate is not the humiliation loss. It's how valuable is experience, regardless of how you lose. Because if you've got experience, even if it's heartbreak, Patriots lost some heartbreakers in the Super Bowl. Nothing more than the Tyree helmet catch loss to the Giants. And granted, they kind of had to reshuffle and retool, but they were able to get back there as a franchise because they had Brady, greatest quarterback of all time, Belichick, you could argue greatest NFL coach of all time. So you've got those two pieces there, and I think it makes such a big difference. So you can lose in heartbreak or in blowout fashion, but the championship pedigree versus not, I think, is the real thing. Once you break that hurdle in sports, whatever it is, it does so much for your confidence because even when you lose, no matter how you lose, you've got that experience on which to draw. And I'd say that was probably the biggest takeaway from Wimbledon men's championship and the big question mark going forward. Meanwhile, there's some other topics for Wimbledon. We're going to get to all that right now because we'll get to NASCAR later this week. Honestly, to me, it was kind of a snoozer of a race. I was surprised at how many people, at least in the initial stages, voted that they thought it was a good race. We'll get to that later. But as smooth as that race was, we want your drive to be smooth, and Trost Law would like it to be smooth as well. They don't want any issues on the highway, but they know it's a possibility, which is why you need this number in the back of your mind. 777-HURT. That's 777 HURT, and the easy way to connect with them, trostlaw.com. That's trostlaw.com, the easy way to learn about what you can get from Randy Trost if you're on the unfortunate end of an auto accident. Now, more Wimbledon thoughts in the Fast Five at 5-ish before we put this to bed and really start diving into NASCAR and football for the rest of this weekend, frankly, for the next handful of months.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
So the women's final, we'll go to that. Amanda Anisimova, who lost that match to Iga Swiatek, 6-love. And obviously the question of, how does she bounce back? One thing that I want to expound upon just a little bit more, and I would say is worth expounding upon. When you hit a slump in sports, or when it's just not your day, there are teammates to pick you up in other sports. It clearly wasn't Patrick Mahomes' day, but you can kind of shift the blame to the offensive line. It clearly wasn't their day, but other players on the Chiefs could step up, and eventually they at least got some cosmetic points. We'll use that as an example of what to do in a blowout. Basketball playoffs are an example of this as well. We'll throw the finals matchup, but a lot of Oklahoma City was dominating their opponent. Or the Boston Celtics when they won the championship last year, in prior cases as well. If a star isn't having a good game, somebody else could still be around to pick up the slack and help. When you're having an off day in a sport like golf, tennis, and I'll even say just running, because as an individual runner, there's no one in those sports to whom you can pass it. If you're having an off day as a driver in NASCAR, your crew may still be able to be great and bail you out. Or the crew may have had an off day, whether it's the car setup or on pit road, but a good driver can bail them out. It's different in tennis. There's nowhere to hide. And for Anisimova, you saw the tears start to flow in that second set when it was obvious she wasn't going to just lose, but there was a real possibility she got beat 6-love for the first time in over 4 decades. I think it was 1983, the year after Trost Law was founded, since they were founded in 1982. That's how long ago it's been since Trost Law has been serving our community, but also since there was a 6-love loss in the Wimbledon women's final. You just don't get that in another sport. And it's worth noting that that's where the courage of being an athlete comes in. And frankly, the courage to try to bounce back, and begs that intriguing question of what's next after that type of performance. Meanwhile, to the other side of that women's final,
Number 4.
Iga Swiatek did dominate 6-love women's champion in 57 minutes. She's now won on all 3 surfaces, and the only Grand Slam she does not have to her record is the Australian Open. Look, I still tend to believe she's probably more likely to have the Roger Federer career for women's tennis, which it's no shame. If she finishes as the second or third best women's tennis player, because Federer is the second or third best men's player, you can debate he and Federer or Nadal. If she finishes like Nadal, her idol, who is the dominant force on clay, king of clay, 14 championships. If Iga Swiatek wins with mostly Roland Garros championships, and then she sprinkles some in at the Australian Open, the US Open, and Wimbledon, I mean, that's like Rafael Nadal. Now, Serena Williams was the most well-versed on all the surfaces. To me, she's the greatest women's tennis player of all time because of how great she was. And I get she was different after her baby was born and she made it back, but she didn't win championships at the rate she did previously. But still, it should not diminish what she did over the course of her career. I think Iga is kind of in that camp. You might be debating her as the second best women's tennis player of all time, and there's no shame in that. Nadal, you could debate he's the second best, he or Federer, to Novak Djokovic. More on that in just a moment. But, the way Iga won, here's the other thing that cracks me up about that, which is number 3. The idea of Iga Swiatek, 6-love, and people being mad because she didn't let up. There's no time limit. Like, let's put this in tennis in context of other sports. If you're in a blowout scenario, sorry, TJ, but I'm going to bring it up. Liberty basketball in the NCAA tournament, later in that game, Dana Altman in Oregon could bleed the clock down and just limit possessions. I saw it firsthand down at the Fiesta Bowl, where Oregon could have dropped 73, but it just ends up winning, whatever it was, 45-6, which was the final score. Oregon is the game we're on. You knew you're going to win. Those sports, basketball, football, they allow you to just bleed the clock out. Think of it more like Liberty softball, where they got blown out in their second and final super regional loss to Oregon, where Oregon just blew them out. There's no timer in softball, or there's no timer per se in tennis to bail you out and mitigate the damage. You just have to get to the finite number, whether it's the number of outs in softball, 21, 3 per inning over 7 innings, or you have to get to 6-6 or 6-6-6, where you have to win 2 or 3 sets in men's and women's tennis. You have to keep your foot on the gas in those sports. There is no let up. So the idea of she should have let up, it's not like she could bleed the clock out in a women's championship. It doesn't work like that in those sports. Some sports, you have to keep your literal, proverbially speaking, pedal to the metal, because that's what you do in a competition. If anything, I think there's actually a betting lesson that goes into. Number 2. The betting lesson for number 2 is this. In some championship scenarios, it's almost to be expected. I would consider playing alt lines, whether it's the alt game line on Iga Swiatek for Nisimova, for example. Hey, she's favored by 5.5 games. You might as well see if she can win by 7.5 or 8.5 and get a better price. Or in championships, the Super Bowl this past year, Eagles were, underdogs to Kansas City, I believe, in the Super Bowl this year. But, if you thought Philly and would dominate, write them on the alt line. Because in championship scenarios, there is no letting off the gas. Like, it's even more pronounced when a championship's on the line because the stakes are so high, you're not going to get a let off the gas. Basketball championships, we've seen that before. This year was an example, but was not an example. But when UConn won their second championship and they blew out everybody, including Purdue and route to it, you're not letting off the gas. You're covering those spreads because there's too much at stake. So from a sports betting perspective, I think that's one of the takeaways is you'll get some blowouts in championships because the winner has every incentive to finish this thing off and leave no doubt. Meanwhile, speaking of being finished, you won't find as many Novak Djokovic fans as I am. But this guy is not winning another Grand Slam unless Sinner or Alcaraz, let me be clear, are not in his way. The way that Jannik Sinner was able to dispatch Novak Djokovic in straight sets in the Wimbledon semifinal, and there were a couple things to note about that. The end of that match, I think, told me all I need to know about Novak Djokovic. Jannik Sinner has a serve out wide. Djokovic puts it back in play and doesn't even move. Like, he's basically out of the picture frame on match point, so far off to the right, the way it's shown on TV in the semifinal. And he's just acknowledging, and Sinner just, lightly knocks it over the net, knowing that nobody's going to be there to hit it, and he's going to be the victor. And to Sinner's credit, look, he was great. To Sinner's credit, he stepped his game up yesterday. I think there's a lot to that. But when I look at Novak Djokovic, he cannot beat a player like Sinner at this point. Carlos, he might, because Carlos is susceptible, and we saw this to an extent yesterday, of having mood swings, when the vibes aren't great, when he's not playing well. Sometimes he really elevates his game and fights through, but other times, it's kind of staring at the clouds, Carlos. Novak can beat staring at the clouds, distracted Carlos. Carlos at a 10.5 is the best player in men's tennis. But there are times when we saw this yesterday where his level is, kind of an 8 to 9. He wasn't bad yesterday. He wasn't embarrassed, but he wasn't locked in. Meanwhile, Jannik Sinner, he was a 9.75, and Sinner stepped it up to a 10 at the end of the second set, the way he closed that out. If you look at some of those points, the movement, the control, the athleticism, and then he had no aces, Sinner did, in the first 2 sets. But he out-aced Carlos Alcaraz, I think it was 7-4 in the third and fourth sets. Sinner elevated his game. It showed a lot about him. And Sinner at 9.5 to 10, he's there every time. And Novak just can't match it. And I get, well, if Novak's healthy, but that's the problem. It's not the age alone. Like, I'll say this. I'm 39 years old. Novak's 38. It's the cumulative wear and tear. I've been competing as a runner in my adult life where I've really taken it seriously for 10 years now. I think there's still plenty of great things I can do as a runner, but it is harder to recover than ever before the older you get. That's just the reality of it. Now, granted, I have kids. It's not my job. The whole view is different. But in Novak Djokovic, he's got a different view on life than a Sinner or an Alcaraz, frankly, and he is a dad and has got kids and a husband. When you're a spouse and you've got kids and you've got them tugging at you, all those little things you have to do. Now, Novak can do it because it's his job, but you combine that with just raw rest and fatigue, it's harder than ever before to bounce back from all of that. Speaking of bouncing back, Virginia Tech and Virginia on the recruiting trail, that. But when we return, the impact of the latest college realignment news. It's not major on a national level, but it's got some tentacles on the local level. We'll explain with DNROnline.com's Shane Metlin next to kick off the Fast Lane and discussing it from a JMU angle.
Have you looked at your home's exterior lately? Do you see faded siding, paint peeling, and wood rotting? Windows that are impossible to open and close and gutters falling off? Call Collins Siding and Windows to transform your home's exterior and save you money on energy costs. Dreaming of a new porch or sunroom? Collins can do that too. Since 1989, Collins Siding and Windows has been transforming homes in Central Virginia. Roofs, windows, siding, gutters, porches, decks, and sunrooms. They can do it all. Call Collins Siding and Windows today, 434-525-6307.
Pull up a seat and join our conversation. Around the Table with Vicki is my new local radio show and podcast discussing leadership, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, faith, and family.
So obviously in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of challenges, that people only typically talk about all the great things, but there's also a lot of challenges that come with entrepreneurship and sacrifice and lessons learned. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced throughout business, and how did you overcome them?
Good question. I think this sounds crazy, but when you're young and you're you get a couple things in a row that work for you, you get this mentality that you can just accomplish whatever you put your mind to it. And there's a lot of truth to that. And, if you push yourself and, maybe you don't know everything, but you learn, you read, you surround yourself with folks that can help you get to that point. You just keep struggling. You get knocked back sometimes. You don't achieve your goal. Something doesn't happen in the time frame that you want. You just keep going. Mm-hmm. I know there was times where I always had these, I'm a goal-driven person where I make a list every night of what I want to do. And you do. And, then you get to work and things happen and they don't get done. But
and you come home and say, I didn't get the thing done on my list.
So, yeah. but it helps me know what my focus is.
Around the Table with Vicki, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on WIQO.
Don Pedro's army has just returned home victorious after the war. Love is in the air, even as two of Shakespeare's most tumultuous couples exchange hilarious quips and damning accusations. Will the truth win in this mischievous game of love? Find out in End Station Theater Company at Randolph College's dazzling music-filled outdoor production of Much Ado About Nothing, running July 2nd through the 20th at Point of Honor. For tickets and information, visit endstationtheater.org.
Rain takes a toll on your house, including your chimney. Even when it's not raining, prolonged humidity impacts your chimney. Don't wait for the problem to enter your house. Call Black Goose Chimney Service. Featuring decades worth of experience, Black Goose Chimney Service will assess what your chimney needs and give you honest answers. Because the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Get ahead of the problem. Call Black Goose Chimney Service and visit blackgoose.net.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you.
800-712-8085. 800-712-8085. 800-712-8085. That's 800-712-8085.
VTRN Sports is now heading to YouTube. Head to youtube.com/@VTRN Sports Lynchburg to watch both the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle and the Fast Lane with Ed Lane live each day. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and have notifications turned on. All the great local content you love with VTRN Sports is now on YouTube. Subscribe to the VTRN Sports YouTube channel at youtube.com/@VTRN Sports Lynchburg.
Hokies, I'm Brent Pry, your head football coach. Start jumping. This is your home for the Hokies. VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, and the VTRN Sports app.
Hi, this is Bill Roth, voice of Virginia Tech football. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
What is the impact on a local level? It may not be big on the national level, but the college realignment news of today has multiple local tentacles that we begin discussing right now in
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
Shane Metlin at DNRonline.com and at Shane_DNR Sports hanging out with us today here in the Fast Lane. The column is up. Despite strong negative fan overreaction, the Sun Belt adding Louisiana Tech is fine. Not great, not terrible. But it's also easy to understand why some hoped for a decision that signaled bigger aspirations. Shane, on a grading scale, because, people love to grade these type of things, is this the most classic example of the Sun Belt, I'll use air quotes here, poaching Louisiana Tech from Conference USA, that this is more of a meh C grade move than anything else?
Yeah, I really think so. It's it doesn't change a whole lot about where the Sun Belt was at beforehand. I've talked about this, recently. It's usually there's winners and losers kind of in realignment, and when it comes to the Sun Belt, you lose a Texas State, and it's ostensibly moving up to the Pac-12 to a stronger conference, more money and everything. But you're replacing them with a team that doesn't really change anything about your own TV deal, your own strength of the conference when it comes to, how it's going to be ranked as far as, football and things like that. They've been solid in sports, but not great. And it doesn't change your geography in any negative way, your travel in any negative way. It's just kind of there, but it wasn't a move that makes you a lot better either, as far as if you're a Sun Belt, where I think might be some of the disappointment to some fans is hoping like, at the very least, let's wait and see what happens other places in realignment. And if anything crazy happens, that might make more teams available to take a look at and discuss.
DNRonline.com at Shane_DNR Sports. Those are the paths to connect with Shane Metlin of the Harrisonburg Daily News Record, who's with us here in the Fast Lane. We're at Fast Lane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube Live, and wherever you listen to podcasts. From a geographic standpoint, Louisiana Tech makes sense. They can slide into the western side of the Sun Belt, vacated by Texas State, who left to go to the Pac-12. All this begins next year, 2026. From a desirability standpoint, am I off base in saying this? I'm not just saying this because we're based in Lynchburg, but Liberty's probably the only school out of the Conference USA, maybe Western Kentucky, where you go, okay, I see some merit in adding that given their multi-program success, especially sustained in football. For Louisiana Tech, am I off base in saying, if you had a chance to add a school, was that really the one that should have been your headliner?
Yeah, I mean, it fits with the West. It kind of, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Western Kentucky, you mentioned Liberty. They're also up there with like the the success kind of across multiple sports and also fitting geographically. I don't know. Maybe you could mention Jacksonville State also being in that geographic footprint, and probably a program that's kind of on the rise, but also, not too far removed from FCS. So yeah, I think, it seems like Louisiana Tech was probably the clear one. It's the one that, it's really, by the time they got too deep into their meetings, it was really the only school that was really being discussed too much. And I think mostly because of just how simply they fit in to what already exists in the Sun Belt.
That's a big point. And, it seems like it's more a marriage of convenience as opposed to shooting for the stars, Shane. Is there really a shooting for the stars scenario the Sun Belt could have pursued or even could have on the retainer? Or at this point, is it pretty much everybody right now just sitting there going, all right, we'll do what we can until 2030 or close to it rolls around and the next perhaps final domino of realignment ends up shaking out?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there wasn't like a shooting for the stars scenario for 2026. There just really wasn't. It was more a matter of like, do you think it's going to be 2030 before we start seeing like major realignment, or will some teams start making some moves here in the next year or two? Like, will Memphis try to make a move here in the next year that send some other dominoes falling? Like, because right now there wasn't a team that the Sun Belt could get that would be like the big, oh my gosh, this really shakes things up kind of move for the Sun Belt. But I think the question was, and what some of the schools in the eastern part of the Sun Belt too, in particular, were thinking was, it might not be that much longer before things really get crazy. And let's be in position to have a spot open for whoever might be available.
Shane Metlin with us here. Thankfully, he's available for us today, and he's always available at Shane_DNR Sports on Twitter and DNRonline.com. Shane, good to be chatting with you. Thank you for the overview of how JMU and the rest of the Sun Belt are impacted by this expansion, poaching Louisiana Tech. We'll use the air quotes for that from Conference USA.
No problem.
Now to UVA.
JerryRatcliffe.com, founder and contributor Jerry Ratcliffe. Hootie is with us once again, hanging out in the fast lane. Hootie, he's spoken, Ryan Odom that is, to the media. Dice the reader. He is on campus. Well, not on campus, but he is at least signed with the University of Virginia. How long till we get clarification on what the next step is for the much anticipated addition to the UVA front court?
That's a $64,000 question, Ed, and I don't think anybody really knows the answer. We've seen these things drag out until the opening week of the season, so I don't know if it'll be that long, but as Ryan Odom pointed out the other day, with fall sports beginning in the next couple of weeks, the NCAA is focusing more on that right now than they are basketball. So it's just a matter of when they get around to it at their on their timetable, and I don't know that anybody has a good guess on that right now.
Hootie, was your biggest takeaway from Ryan Odom's press conference the same as mine, which is, probably knew this, but expect a faster pace, especially offensively?
Oh, yeah, no question about it. We knew that, and what impressed me was just him talking about the collection of all the shooters he has in this program. That's been my gripe about Virginia basketball for the last several years, is they just haven't had enough guys who could shoot. They'd have maybe two guys, and if one of them was having an off night, the defense would just focus on shutting down the other guy and make the others beat them. And more often than not, they didn't have anybody capable of doing so. So I think this makes them much less vulnerable, particularly to mediocre teams that used to hang around just because of the pace and lack of offense. But I don't see any weaknesses in this offense at all.
Yeah, it's exciting for Virginia. You've got that, and we'll see how the defense gels on the hardwood for Ryan Odom's squad. Meanwhile, we'll wrap it up on baseball because football is going to start to take over next week with ACC kickoff. Virginia baseball, they've added an arm from Oklahoma State. They've added a top 40 Major League Baseball prospect who withdrew from the draft, and he's inking for Virginia. Bigger picture, Are you continuing to be pleasantly surprised by Chris Pollard and the fact that these may not be what they had previously with Coach O'Connor, but still it looks like Virginia's in, all things considered, a pretty good spot?
Yeah, I've been blown away by his success so far, Ed. I wondered how he was going to put together practically a brand new roster, not completely, but a real overhaul of the program because so many guys entered the portal. He's been able to get a couple of them back, but by flipping recruits from Duke to Virginia and using the portal to his advantage, I think he's blown everybody away with the success he's had in rounding out the roster. And I know nobody else is sitting still either, but in the conference. But I think he's done incredible work, and I think Virginia will be a contender in the conference next year because there's just so much talent headed this way.
It's a good sign for UVA and something their fans want to hear after the disappointing departure of Brian O'Connor. The disappointment is that Jerry Ratcliffe departs from us right now, but it's not too bad because you can just go to jerryratcliffe.com and catch all his great work there. Jerry, thank you for your time in the Fast Lane. We'll be seeing you down in Charlotte next week.
Sounds good, Ed. We'll see you there.
Now to the Virginia Tech Hokies.
With David Cunningham of TechSideline.com. David, thank you for joining us today in the Fast Lane. Virginia Tech, an interesting departure. Jaden Anderson, the wide receiver who was a true freshman, entering the transfer portal. Is there something going on behind the scenes? Just a natural question it would seem to ask, given that you don't see a lot of these transfers coming in the middle of July before practice may come and you get clearly relegated on the depth chart. What do you make of this potentially somewhat surprising news?
Yeah, I think it's it's one of those things where a guy just doesn't really settle into college a little bit. Not a great situation. I think it's tough, Ed, because it's tough for us because we're not necessarily as connected with the program right now. Not seeing them practice, not talking to Pry on a weekly basis. But from everything we've been told, one of those things, again, where a guy just doesn't really fit in college. He has some personal stuff going on. And, the bottom line is coaches have rules and coaches have ways they structure their program, things you have to follow. And if you don't live up to those expectations, if you don't follow those guidelines, a lot of times, you and the program don't mesh and you don't see eye to eye. You have to go different directions. So I don't think there's anything crazy to it. I think it's just kind of a simple matter of fact of, a guy who just came out of high school. I think he was supposed to enroll early in January, didn't enroll until the summer. And then, he doesn't last long in college after enrolling. A little bit of a bummer because he was a really, really talented kid and interested to see if the Hokies can keep that green run pipeline going. It's working pretty well for them, I think, so far.
Yeah, we'll see that. Are you worried at all about the green run pipeline being impacted, or do folks at the high school level understand as much as the folks at the college level that sometimes these things are going to happen and you may get one of these every now and again?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think Hokies have had plenty of those guys come in from green run. Keelan Adams is kind of the veteran of those guys. We'll see if he can do something on the football field. I think we talked about this before, Ed. I think that's the biggest thing as far as recruiting goes. You establish a pipeline like this, like Highland Springs, you have to get those guys to go out and prove it and show it on the field and actually produce, because that's what gets high school guys to continue to want to come to your school. I think Virginia Tech's sitting good right now, but it would help if a guy like Keelan Adams, a guy like Knowledge Harrell, or some of these guys who have just committed, when they get to campus, do something. Become a starter, become a rotational player, a guy who can come in and play. I don't think it will impact it too much, especially because he's only a freshman coming in. He was still going to have to earn and work for his playing time. I think what could really boost it, Ed, is a guy like Keelan Adams, if assuming he's back healthy, if he has a breakout season, a breakout role for the Hokies, where he's this highly touted guy. He was great in high school, down in Virginia Beach. Can he be a weapon for Virginia Tech? New offensive coordinator Phil Montgomery, how do you use him if he's healthy? I think that's something that could kind of spark the pipeline a little bit and continue to get some of those Green Run kids and other kids from Virginia Beach to want to go to Virginia Tech.
David Cunningham, he's at The Real D Cunna on Twitter and Instagram and at techsideline.com. David, thank you for your Hokies insight today here in the Fast Lane.
Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
David Cunningham with us here in the Fast Lane. That does it for part one. Part two, more on conference realignment with Liberty, plus changes coming with the football program. Not really big, but one player that is not likely to appear. That when we return here in the Fast Lane.
Savings are heating up, and so are the summer super deals at the used car superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. You don't need super strength to get approved for credit. Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is super easy on the Motor Mile with financing options for every budget. Sheeler makes car buying easy with the hottest brands all in one location. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Over 900 used vehicles in stock now and ready to move. More than any other dealer in the area, plus exceptional service, selection, and savings. Need some summer spending cash? Sheeler will buy your vehicle even if you don't buy from us. Plus super money for your trade. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume with over 900 used vehicles in stock now. No games, no gimmicks, just summer super deals at the used car superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer, locally owned for over 50 years. ID1 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Car insurance rates are rising rapidly. That's no secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
Since we've been advertising with the Virginia Talk Radio Network, we've grown at Executive Maintenance, and we need more help. Are you a hard worker looking to earn some extra money? Executive Maintenance would love to speak with you. We're adding honest, trustworthy people who have their own transportation and a good attitude. We'll check your references, so make sure you're ready to bring the right attitude to Executive Maintenance. If you bring that, then we'll bring you up to par with the skills needed to excel. Call us today and learn more at executivemaintenancelynchburg.com.
When planning a summer trip, you probably have a checklist. So if you're driving, here's a safety checklist. If you see flashing lights on the side of the road, slow down and move over. If you're in an accident and can move off the road, try to find a safe spot like a parking lot. And if you're on the shoulder, it helps to have your flashers on. Just some friendly tips from our family at TROSLAW. We hope you never need us, but if you do, we're here to help at 777-HURT and TROSLAW.com.
Hi, I'm Matt with Fleet Feet Roanoke. I've enjoyed working with Ed Lane and the Virginia Talk Radio Network, but when they sold their Roanoke station, I was skeptical the partnership could still provide value. Months later, I'm thankful that Ed took the time to meet with me, discuss the right solutions, and a plan to invite his audience to Fleet Feet Roanoke. Now we're able to build a connection with that audience thanks to Ed's creativity. Stop by and see us at Fleet Feet Roanoke to learn more. We'd love to get to know you.
Email info@virginiatalkradionetwork.com to start growing your business.
Looking to grow your business and reach new customers? Your audience is waiting right here on Virginia Talk Radio Network, and its 8 over-the-air radio stations and digital platforms is the best advertising option in Virginia. Our loyal listeners tune in daily, ready to hear about products and services just like yours. With targeted advertising, you can reach the right people at the right time. Whether you're promoting a sale, a new product, or simply building brand awareness, we've got you covered. We have the products. We deliver 3 audio formats: classic hits, news, talk, information, and sports, to 8 over-the-air FM and AM radio stations. Ready to get started? Contact us today. And let's create an ad campaign that delivers results. In 2024, we started 886,539 digital streams. So VTRN is the place where your business gets heard. Call Melinda 434-534-8500 or info@virginiatalkradionetwork.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Part 1 in the books. Part 2 coming up right now in Covering the Commonwealth, talking Liberty Flames.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the Liberty Flames.
Is John Manson from ASeaofRed.com trolling Liberty Flames fans? Is he putting clickbait out there? Or are we embellishing here in the Fast Lane and haven't done it yet, but perhaps soon at Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? Flames coaches hot seat rankings. Dr. Richardson's photo is the one that is what pops up at ASeaofRed.com. John, we say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek because the question now has been, have we gotten to the point now where at Liberty, in their three biggest sports, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and you could even put the fourth with softball, probably the fourth one in that group, or maybe the grouping, Liberty, pretty good stability at a number of prominent, higher-profile sports.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that previously, but, it seems like and it's also something we've covered at ASEA Red over the past, few months, really since the end of the this past athletic season after softball and baseball got done. But, Liberty's got a lot of, what you could call Mount Rushmore type, first ballot Hall of Fame type coaches from, Richie McKay, Dot Richardson, that are currently on campus. Those two obviously would be at the top of the list. You can look at golf's coach and Jeff Thomas and just go across the board and field hockey and several sports are in that situation. And we've also, previously, talking about the, hot seat rankings for the coaches. It's been, a lot of success pretty much across the board. I think there's been 17 out of 20 Liberty Division I sports has won a championship here in the last, 2 or 3 years. And as long as you're winning championships and doing things the right way on and off the field or court, you're going to, have success. And with the way Liberty's able to support their programs and, facilities and resources and obviously pay as well, too, that they're able to retain a lot of those coaches, too, where a lot of their peers maybe are not able to do that quite as well.
J.C. Manson and ASEA of Red are the Twitter accounts for ASeaofRed.com founder John Manson. We're at Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube Live, and however you listen to podcasts. John, pivoting from that over to football, I read the report from thestate.com, and Chapel Fowler, who writes for them, did a really good job of detailing Marquise Henderson, the four-star running back. Liberty seemed to be in play for him to come. Now it looks like that's not going to happen, probably tied into the reports, which, tell me if I'm wrong, seems like a guy that maybe needs to take a step away from football altogether before trying to get back into the game, whether it's at Liberty or somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point there. I mean, he's obviously very talented. You wouldn't be a four-star and end up at a place like Clemson right out of high school if you're not. And, I think Liberty's fan base and coaching staff were cautiously optimistic about what Henderson could bring to the field. Because obviously, in between the white lines, he's a good player. But, as we see so often, a lot of times it's hard for these players to make the adjustment from being the guy in high school and really probably all of their childhood and into their high school career to going to college, to where you have to work for it. You got to earn it. You can't just show up and be the best guy. And, so we had heard that Henderson did spend some time on campus at Liberty this summer. Not exactly sure the dates of that and how long he was there, but he did not obviously last, and whether that was a mutual parting of the ways or Liberty's coaching staff electing to go in another direction, I'm not sure. But whether Henderson takes some time off of football or he, maybe ends up at a D2 or FCS or JUCO ranks for a period of time where he can not have to focus on football as much, but, take care of himself off the field and get him back to where he could be. And you never know. I mean, he could end up back at a Liberty or a Clemson or somewhere similar if things go well the next, couple of years, if he handles himself well, more than, more importantly, off the field as opposed to on the field.
Great points by John Manson. There are more of them at aseaofred.com, and he's sharing them with us today. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, Facebook Live, YouTube, and however you listen to podcasts. If you've missed anything so far from our chat with John, Liberty itself, Conference USA, they're impacted by realignment. Louisiana Tech is leaving. First of all, am I off base in saying that, if you're looking at schools from Conference USA to grab, I get the geographic fit. Texas State leaves, Louisiana Tech can slide into the Sun Belt West. But if you're talking like competitive standpoint for Liberty, whether it's Liberty, Western Kentucky, or Jacksonville State, it seems like the conference has other programs that might be a bigger, better brand fit for the Sun Belt, and maybe they missed an opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting. We could talk about that for a long time, Ed, and go in a lot of different ways. I think Louisiana Tech, going to the Sun Belt, it's obviously interesting. Lots of different things you point out. They're one of the lowest funded schools in Conference USA, the way it's currently constructed, and that's interesting. They obviously kind of fit in well as far as geographically in the Sun Belt with Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana Monroe, just to name a couple. So that makes sense for them. I think if I was Louisiana Tech, I'd prefer to be in the Sun Belt. They obviously have to pay that around a $5 million exit fee out of Conference USA, and then there's also a buy-in fee to the Sun Belt. So it's not a cheap move, but it should help their travel expenses in the long term once they get there. But from Conference USA's perspective, even Liberty's perspective, I don't think it's a bad move in the long term, losing Louisiana Tech or even UTEP. I mean, neither one of those schools, at least in football in recent years, have been, frankly, that competitive in Conference USA. So it doesn't really hurt the league from a football standpoint. Some of the other sports, especially UTEP, they've been competitive, obviously knocked out Liberty in the men's basketball tournament, going back over a year now. So it's interesting from that standpoint. And then as far as Western Kentucky, I think they would be a good fit, athletically across some of the top sports. They're always competitive in football, and maybe not as quite as good of a regional fit. And then I think, we could talk about Liberty. I'm not sure if the Sun Belt would want Liberty, and I'm also not sure that Liberty would want the Sun Belt. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. But certainly a topic that if we have another slow weekend or Monday in sports, we can dive into a little bit further.
John Manson with us here in the Fast Lane. Those are actually going to be going away. We're getting closer to the start of football season. John, thank you for your time today in the Fast Lane. We'll get into your Conference USA Media Day observations after that takes place later this week, and we'll catch up again probably in another couple weeks when we get back from ACC Football Media Days.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Ed.
It's always our pleasure to chat with John Manson from aseaofred.com here in the Fast Lane on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville Southside.
Now to NASCAR.
Danny Peters of frontstretch.com recapping the NASCAR race at Sonoma, where once again it was Shane Van Gisbergen dominating in the Cup Series race. He has dominated road courses this year. Shane, thank you for, not Shane, Danny Peters, to discuss Shane. Danny, similar accent, by the way. Thank you for joining us today in the Fast Lane. Danny, good to be chatting with you. Shane Van Gisbergen, the greatest NASCAR road racer since Jeff Gordon.
Jeff Gordon. Well, first of all, Ed, thanks for having me on. Secondly, any Kiwi would say they don't sound like a British person and vice versa, but close enough. I'll give you that.
I sound real uneducated, so thank you for re-educating me.
But yeah, I mean, he led 97 of the 110 laps yesterday, which broke Jeff Gordon's 2004 record of leading 92 laps. But yeah, I mean, he's absolutely been dominant on the road courses. When I spoke to Chase Briscoe after the race finished on pit road, Chase said, I guess it's a bit like playing basketball against Michael Jordan in his prime, racing Shane Van Gisbergen on road courses. And I thought that was quite a good analogy, really, because, he had the field covered yesterday, absolutely covered.
Yes, he did. And your colleague, Dalton Hopkins at frontstretch.com, is imploring frontstretch.com listeners, or readers in this case, to stop complaining and just appreciate SVG. Are you in that camp, or is it hard when you're going to a race and you know that the battle is really just for second?
I mean, I think Captain Dalton is right. We should recognize this kind of historic level of dominance that we're seeing, and worth noting too, this is his rookie season in Cup, and that's his third win already, tying Jimmy Johnson and Tony Stewart as the other two rookies who've won 3 races in the season. And Jimmy won 7 championships and Tony won 3, so he's in good company there. But yeah, I think sometimes you've just got to say, hands down, they've got something figured out that everyone else hasn't. And obviously Shane has got SVG has a lot of experience on road courses, in his career. But yeah, I mean, hats off to him. He had a dominant day. He led practice, he qualified on pole, and in the Xfinity race he finished second to teammate Connor Zilic. And those two are friends, and both spoke about it in press conferences. And you wonder on another day, does SVG, put the move on Connor if he's not a teammate? I don't know, but it could have been, an absolutely perfect weekend for him. And, hats off to him. 4 wins in 34 races. That's a lot of playoff points he's got. And, headed into the playoffs with the Roval in the round of 12, a berth in the last 8 is not beyond question for the rookie. So, hats off to him.
Well, and the most important thing that came out of the race yesterday is actually what happened today. NASCAR vindicating. I'm being a little over dramatic here. But Ty Gibbs and his crew, with what happened with them and the RFK team with Keselowski on pit road yesterday, jokes aside about Ty Gibbs, how impressed were you with not only what he was able to do, but the fact that there were some other drivers that look like they're finding their footing here from road course races, even though it's gotten overshadowed by SVG?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ty is starting to put together, some better results. He ran well yesterday, and aside from the issue on pit road, Ty's got to be looking at getting a win. That's what he needs to do now if he wants to make the playoffs. And it feels like his turn is coming. And if we want to talk about another Ty, nice segue. Another Ty to mention would be Ty Dillon. Making the final 4 of the in-season tournament, getting his way past Bowman right at the end, and that continues to be a great story. I mean, he knocked out Denny Hamlin in round 1, the number 1 seed, and Ty continues to make progress. And could we see Ty Dillon as the winner of the in-season tournament? I think he faces off against John Hunter Nemechek in Dover, and then he would have the winner of Reddick and Gibbs. So not out the question. The Ties had a good day yesterday.
Yes, they most definitely did. We've had a good day because Danny Peters, that's his Twitter handle as well, has joined us from frontstretch.com. Danny, great to chat as always. We much appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on, Ed. Always good to speak to you.
And last but not least, or maybe least, the Lynchburg Hillcats.
Jason Prill hanging out with us today in the Fast Lane. Jason, it's good to be chatting with you once again. Big innings carrying the Lynchburg Hillcats. It took a moment, but they finally got their 50th win against the Hickory Crawdads on Sunday. Is there a level of exhaling from the Hillcats because of that?
Yeah, you know what, Ed? I think there really was. They had their backs kind of up against the wall against Hickory. They were struggling. They just couldn't get anything going at the plate. But getting to that 50th win mark, it's a huge milestone. I'm not saying the guys were playing for that necessarily, but it still is a nice reward for everything that they've put towards this season, especially hitting that before the All-Star break. That's one less thing you have to even think about coming back.
Yes, it is a big one for the Lynchburg Hillcats. They get the break now and have a chance to hit the reset button. Is there kind of a necessary thing with the Hillcats having, had the momentum of winning the first half Carolina League Championship, then kind of rolling through after that? How much value is there from an on-field product for the Hillcats being able to say, all right, here we go. We've got a chance to hit the reset button over the stretch run.
Yeah, I think it's vital. I think these next couple of days with the guys getting a little bit of time away from the ballpark, getting away from their teammates, getting away from the coaches, not having to think about baseball, I think it's good. I say it pretty much every single week in the broadcast. A lot of these guys are not used to playing 132 games. If they came out of college, they may have played 50, maybe 60. If they played in the Arizona Complex League, they maybe got 40. So these are guys that are not used to playing this much baseball all throughout the summer. So right around now is when they start hitting their, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, my body's sore, I need to get back into it. That's what they're hitting right now. And so being able to pause, being able to hit the reset button, being able to have a couple days to themselves to where they can refresh themselves and refocus their minds, that's going to do wonders for this team going down the stretch.
Jason Prill does wonders for us with his Lynchburg Hillcats coverage and insight today here in the Fast Lane. Jason, I haven't had a chance to ask you about this. There's so many upgrades coming as part of the renovations to City Stadium once we get through this upcoming season and preparing for 2026. One of those is the enhanced sound system. Any truth to the rumor that I might be able to be a DJ for the Hillcats one day, even though I have no experience?
Well, Ed, you are on the radio, so there already is a little bit of experience. I would say that if that's something you're interested in, it's definitely a conversation that we could have.
Well, if we can have the conversation, we might want to do it on the radio just so you can really exploit my weaknesses on the resume for putting that together. Jokes aside, it's part of the excitement for the Hillcats improving City Stadium. Jason, thank you for your time as always today in the Fast Lane. We'll chat again and catch your breath now after 2 straight weeks of games.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Ed.
It's our pleasure. Jason Prill with us to wrap up the Fast Lane. That does it for us today. Now on to VSiN's Make It Rain with Adam Shine. We're back tomorrow, 5 to 6 on the VTRN Sports app. And ask that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
13-1. Still is, as it turns out.